So here's the features of Magic Blob. First, we've got speed. That controls the speed of the noise which goes through the object. You've got distort. You can see what that does here. It controls the displacement. You've got the seed. So you can use this if you've got multiple Magic Blobs in your scene and you want them all to be different. These are the squash controls. These pipe directly into the volume noise, so that does squash to the volume noise. You've got resolution. That controls the overall resolution of your primitive. And speaking of primitive, if we go down here, you can see you've got all of the Maya primitives you want to use. So if you want your blob to be a torus, you've got cylinder, you've got plane. That brings me to the next part. Since toruses and prisms and planes all have different attributes, they're all wired into these 5 attributes here. So these control different things depending on what your primitive is. So for primitive, attribute 1 is that, and that, and that. I think cube only has 3. If you change it, however, to say something more complicated like the helix, then you can see your attributes all control the different attributes of the helix. I think this one uses all 5. Oh, well, maybe just 4. Okay, so that's that. Let's bring it back to cube. This is the default. Next down the list, we've got spherify. Spherify basically just takes whatever primitive you've got and sort of like bulges it into a sphere. Can be useful if you want to keep to a blob, but if you want to work with primitives, you can turn that off, especially if you're working with plane. Say if you want to have a, work with a plane without having it bulge into a circle like that, maybe you want to have spherify turned off. So that's spherify. We've got random spin here. This is connected to an expression that controls the orientation of your primitive object. It doesn't change the rotation of your object. It changes the orientation when it's when it's built. So you crank this up, and if you want your mesh to move around a bit, you can add to that. So that's random spin. Implode connects to the implode of the volume noise. So that's, if you know about volume noise, you know what that does. Frequency, this connects to the the frequency of the color. Oh yes, we've got this is where the shape attributes end and the color attributes begin. So here you can control the color of your Magic Blob. Whoops, deform amount, that's connected to the amplitude of the noise. You've got your color. This is connected to kind of like a ramp. If you cycle through, you'll just go through the hue range. You can add a bit of noise to your color with this. The default is 0.1, but you can crank it all the way up and get these sort of things happening too. The color is also animated. You can increase the speed by cranking the color noise up. You can see what that does. You've got your saturation. By default it's 1, but if you want it to be black and white, you can bring it down. And you've got your value. So basically, color is hue, saturation is how gray it is, and value is how black it is. So you can control your colors that way. Opacity, that's pretty much self-explanatory, except there's 2 different types of opacity. You've got hard and soft opacity. If I bring this down to like 0.4 and crank that a bit, if we have soft opacity, you can hard opacity rather, you can see what that does. It gives you a hard edge to your noise opacity. So you can fade between hard and soft opacity if you want, and that will also be affected by what type of noise you're using. So if I change the noise to billow, you can see that it changes. If I change that to space-time, there we go. Did I mention that? You can choose which type of noise you want to have. The Maya defaults, Perlin, billow, volume, wispy, da-da-da-da-da. I want to include a couple custom options in the future. That's going to be for a later release. What else have we got? Color. Emission, I think that's incandescence if you're using the Fong, and emission if you're using the Arnold shader. The rig comes with 2 shaders you can use. And then finally, you've got this one here, texture follow rig. So you can see if I move the rig around, it kind of like moves as one thing, but it's kind of neat if you say texture follow rig is 0. Now I'm sort of moving through the texture, and you can set it to 0.1 and it'll sort of move through the texture, or 0.9 and it'll sort of follow, and that works with translate, rotate, and scale. That is about all there is to the Magic Blob. I hope you have fun using it. There's a lot of applications for this. Please hit me up if you have any questions at all. I'll try to get back to you within 24 hours. Thanks a lot.